We're going to continue our conversations with 2022 midterm candidates. Today, we will be speaking with J.R. Majewski, who's a Republican candidate for Congress, hoping to represent Ohio's 9th district. J.R., it's really great to have you on today.
Thanks, Dave. Good pleasure to be here, sir. I appreciate it.
So why are you running? What led you to run?
Well, I've lived in the 9th district for pretty much my entire life, born and raised here. And I've become more and more active in the community. And, I decided that with Marcy Chapter being at, having served office for 40 years and, just the way the country, I think, is going at this time, I think that it was time for someone like me to jump in the race, and someone that's actually born here and that was raised here, understands the district, grew up and lived through all the trials and tribulations that the district has to offer, and someone who served the country. I think that, I could be an asset to all the people that live here.
What things would you say are not going in the right direction in the district?
Representation, I think, is one thing. If you go across District 9 and talk to folks, regardless of their political affiliation, they find many people don't even know who Marcy is. And having been in office for 40 years, I find that troubling. Secondly, we're becoming more and more of a polarized nation. And I think getting back into the practice of engaging in healthy political discourse is missing. And, that's something that I've always been about. And, I really think that we need someone to bring that behavior and that mindset into the leadership position of representative for this district.
One of the things that I believe it's your communications director, it was your communications contact that we were in touch with, said was that you're a constitutional warrior and you want to take the country back. Can you talk about who do you want to take it back from?
I think it needs to be taken back from the establishment, from those that were elected by the people to fulfill, various roles of office. But I think the people are the general consensus, in my opinion, is that the people feel as if the government and our elected representatives are extremely indifferent from what our expectations were when we voted them into office.
Can you give an example of that? In other words, who would be an individual where we would say the expectation was A and here's B, which is what they're actually doing and we don't like it?
I would say example A would be Marcy Chapter. You would expect if you made a phone call to your representative that you would get contacted and be contacted and responded to within a reasonable amount of time. And I've very rarely have met anyone that can describe to me a situation where they've called and they've got a response within 48, 72 hours. I mean, some folks do not even get responded back to.
So one of your big things would be, I think I'm hearing you say, you would set up a system to respond to constituents more quickly?
Absolutely. One of my campaign commitments, actually my first one, is that, I hold a town hall in every county within the district that I represent at least once a quarter.
When it comes to the constitutional piece of some of the material that we got from you, are there parts of the Constitution that you believe aren't currently being followed?
Yeah, I think free speech is being trampled on right now from various outlets, mostly from what I see as social media and big tech.
Okay.
I can give examples of that.
Now, just to be clear, JR, so our audience understands, when I said the Constitution, when you say free speech, am I right to understand that you mean the First Amendment to the Constitution?
Absolutely. Yeah, our First Amendment.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, the institutions you mentioned aren't governmental institutions, and the First Amendment only applies to government. So in what way would that apply to big tech or social media?
Well, generally speaking, I think we have a right to free speech. And when we have institutions that are meant to and intended to be a forum where public discourse can take place, and you have arbitrary decision makers that decide what is good and what is bad, I think that is, in my opinion, an assault against our First Amendment rights.
So let's dig into that, because I think this is such a meaty issue where there's so much to discuss. Will you concede that the First Amendment only applies to government? Like Twitter has nothing. Twitter is not governed by the First Amendment. I hear you saying maybe you would like it to be, but do you agree that as far as the law is today, Twitter and the First Amendment are not intertwined in any way?
I would say that I'm not. I wouldn't be prepared to answer that now in the manner in which I would like. I like to look into things a little bit more, but I would say that the general, perception is reality, right? And um, at this day and age, I feel as if there is, again, I think when I post this something on Facebook and it gets taken down and it's labeled as promoting hate speech when I'm just posting a picture of a meme of someone, there's no violence and it's just someone's face.
Okay.
I don't comprehend how that is, promoting violence, or to me.
Sure, that sounds like that's your opinion about a meme, but I guess so we can establish a set of facts on which we can then talk about this. Facebook having terms of service has nothing to do with the First Amendment to the Constitution and government abridging speech, right?
I can agree with that.
You can agree with that. So it sounds like you don't like the way some social media companies are enforcing terms of service. Is that fair?
Right. Yeah,
fair.
That's fair.
In general, as a conservative, constitutional conservative, do you favor more or less business regulation?
Less, I would think, but it's all circumstantial. I mean, there has to be some regulations. Not all of our businesses are automatically ethical and principally driven. So
100%, 100%. But in general, you tend to favor letting businesses do what they want to do, as long as it's not against the law. Maybe, is that fair?
To a degree, but I mean, if they some businesses work under the auspices of purchase agreements. That's not necessarily the law, or
Sure.
labor relations agreements. So I mean, there's just a fine line of being ethical and meeting meeting their responsibilities, regardless of where that responsibility stems from.
100% fair. I'm with you all the way. As applied. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm actually more of a libertarian.
Even more interesting then. So as a libertarian, would you agree that forcing a private company like Twitter or Facebook to have to publish your meme would be extremely authoritarian regulation of businesses?
I mean, I can agree. I can say yes, but I mean, it's all based on context, when I mean, there's nothing that explicitly limits my ability to post that meme, because there was no violation of their terms of services. I can
Sure,
say
yeah,
that.
no, it sounds like you disagree with the enforcement, but you're not actually suggesting the government force Facebook to have to let you publish it. You just disagree with their choice.
Right. And
Fair.
I think the arbitration needs to be taken out of the picture. It needs to be black and white. There needs to be, if they're going to have rules, those rules should be, enforced.
Okay, fair. Yeah, no, I think we might disagree about how to enforce it, but I don't disagree with you in principle. When this is just kind of like a gut check question that I've been asking candidates that we talk to, and shockingly, sometimes they're not able to answer. Who's the current president of the United States, JR?
Joe Biden.
Okay, and do you think he was elected legitimately?
I think the election was stolen, personally. I mean,
you do?
I think there were extreme irregularities with the election, yes.
In which states?
Oh man, you got me on the spot. I know
Well, I guess let me put it a different way. There's no one state that Biden won that's in question that would have flipped it to Trump. So I guess what group of states might be part of it?
Well, I mean, Georgia had election irregularities, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Even here in Ohio, we had some.
Okay. And when you say irregularities, there's been claims levied, like, for example, dead people voted twice, all these different things. There were, quote, massive dumps of ballots in the middle of the night, this type of thing. What specifically do you think happened, like in Georgia? And I mentioned Georgia because Republicans oversaw that and were in charge of the election. What do you think happened there?
I mean, personally, I don't speculate on those things. What I say is that, where there's smoke and there's fire.
Okay.
And I believe that I believe that our Congress had an obligation to, put those concerns of a lot of American people to rest. Whether they were right or wrong, our congressional members have an obligation. And the fact that we want, we've move forward, and Congress hasn't put those issues to rest. It's just it's exacerbated the problem where we have people on both sides of the aisle that are so polarized. I mean, look.
Well, help me understand putting to rest, because when I try to do a fair hearing, right, of the claims.
Sure.
And we had 63 different state level legal complaints filed, all found to be either without merit or to lack standing. And we had a variety of different investigations take place in different states. There was one in Georgia. There was one in Arizona. Sometimes it turns out Joe Biden won by even more. What would satisfy you that would, quote, put it to rest, as you say?
An audit, a full-on audit of the states that have asked for one. If Arizona claims that they've had election irregularities, and they are the people there are asking for an audit, I believe that our Congress should allow that to move forward. And
but they did an audit in Arizona, and Biden got even more votes.
Okay.
The cyber ninjas did the audit. Was that audit not satisfactory?
That's true. You're right on that. What about Wisconsin, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I guess the question would be, if there are irregularities, why is it that no courts seem to agree with that, even when it's Trump appointed judges? I'm trying to figure it out for myself.
Yeah, but I mean, you're somewhat of putting a slight on it's Republican, this Republican. I'm not looking at it in that manner. I'm looking at it from the people.
Okay.
If the people are asking for, it's not a partisan argument. It's if the people believe that the election was stolen, whether if it's they believe it in their hearts, or they're out surfing the internet and they're running rampant on message boards, right? We have in my opinion, we have an obligation as the government to put those concerns to rest. And if they were put to rest, people like me, look, I'm a very reasonable guy.
Yeah.
I might be a Trump supporter, but that doesn't mean I'm doing things that certain folks would attribute to your rampant Trump supporters.
No, that's why I think this conversation is so useful. So I guess my question would be like, what's the threshold, right? Because most people in Wisconsin don't think that it was rigged in Wisconsin or that it was stolen. There are some people that do, but it's not the majority. So what should be the threshold to trigger a multi-million-dollar audit at taxpayer expense?
I think it all comes from, look, each state has to maintain their election integrity.
Right.
Right. And so long as each state is satisfied and the people aren't, you have thousands of people that are screaming election fraud. Maybe it's a round of diplomacy. I don't know, but
no, but that's what I'm trying to figure out, because so you've got almost 6 million people in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Most people think the election was the results are the real results. Biden won. If only 5 Wisconsinites, I don't know what the word would be. If 5 Wisconsin residents think it was stolen, on the basis of 5 people, should there be a multi-million-dollar audit?
No.
Okay. No. What about 100?
No.
So then I guess what I'm asking is, what is the threshold?
It's not, you're asking me to answer questions that I don't believe are relevant to.
Oh, okay.
That to me, that's a state issue. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of unrest. And when we came out of the when we came out of our election cycle,
yep,
right, many people knew that there was going to be a debate. President Trump laid the thought process out there. He was skeptical of the integrity of our election.
Okay, and
many other folks were saying the same. I would have expected Congress to have a plan to recover from that, regardless of what the Electoral College results were, right? And they didn't do that. We just moved forward, and there are a lot of people that feel they feel deplatformed.
But what choice does Congress have if there's no actual evidence of fraud that would have changed the results in any states? I don't think Congress has any choice when there's 63 complaints and every court says we don't see any merit here. What can Congress really do?
I think Congress can do a lot, and they've proved that time after time. They just didn't. They investigated President Trump for Russian collusion for how many years, and there come to be no evidence of that. So,
but hold on a second, JR. There's a difference between the investigative authority. Hold on a second, but let's take that seriously. The investigative authority of the House is very different than the very narrowly prescribed rules for how to count electoral votes, right? Like, do you agree with Trump that Mike Pence could have sent it back to the states, or do you agree with the constitutional scholars that he doesn't have that power?
My understanding is he did have that power.
You think he did have that power?
Yeah.
What's the basis in law for that?
I mean, if he had the support in the Senate from senators that didn't believe that the results,
but he didn't. What I'm saying is, given that he didn't have the support the support from the Senate, what could Pence have done?
Nothing.
Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Yeah. So it would have required the support. See, a lot of your colleagues don't agree with that, including Trump himself. Trump thinks Pence could have unilaterally done something, but it sounds like you and I are on the same page.
I don't understand it in that manner.
Okay.
I don't know what the context of what President Trump said, other than, so when I hear that, my impression is that Trump felt as if, he would have had the support in the Senate and then would have sent the results back. But again, if he didn't have the votes in the Senate, I don't understand how he could have done that.
Okay, I think you and I definitely disagree with Trump on that. Let's talk a little bit about foreign policy. Sure. Donald Trump was different than many previous Republicans who were more neoconservative, like George W. Bush, in that Trump talked a lot about he's going to keep us out of wars. As a combat veteran yourself and as a Republican, what was your sense of the kind of Trumpian foreign policy idea of wars are bad and I'm going to keep us out of them?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think that, what kind-minded, kind-hearted American wants to be in a war? I mean, I think wars are bad. They're good for the economy in some respects, but they're bad for our humanitarian efforts across the world. I mean, fair. The United States should not be engaging in foreign wars. I mean, diplomacy should be our go-to at all times.
On that note, are you pleased with Joe Biden's handling of Russia's invasion of Ukraine so far, committing to no boots on the ground and sticking to it as far as we can see?
Yes. I mean, I don't believe that we should be engaging with a military effort there. I'm a little bit displeased with the messaging that's come out and the turnaround. In talking about having a no-fly zone, sending military equipment. I mean, to me, that's something that no one wants to see Ukrainians die, but Vladimir Putin has made it very, very clear where he stands on what he would perceive as a direct threat, and he did highlight some of those things. And I don't think we're doing enough from a diplomatic perspective.
You want to see more diplomacy, but you're happy that we are not engaging on the ground.
Absolutely.
Fair. January 6, 2021. Were you in D.C. on that day?
Yeah, I was.
And were you in the area of the Capitol?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you go into the Capitol?
No, absolutely not.
You didn't. Did you breach barricades?
No.
You didn't?
No. Mm-mm.
What was the extent of your presence there?
We watched Trump's speech. We walked on the path to the Capitol building, and then now in retrospect, there were some wind fences that were up, but we weren't aware of that by the time we got there. And when we did get to the Capitol building, within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, Capitol Police started to engage the crowd, and so everybody that I was with, we left.
You left at that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your sense of, there's now close to maybe even more than 700 defendants to different degrees for their involvement on that day. What's your sense of how they're being treated by the justice system?
I mean, from what I understand, they're being held with, the due. I think the timely due process that they deserve isn't being afforded to them. From what I understand, I would like to see these things expedited. But look, this is a problem that we have across the country. Sometimes our courts are overloaded, but there's just so much discourse out there. There's so much messaging out there that it's hard to see through the fog. But I believe that these folks deserve a speedy trial. And, many of the charges that have been placed against them, they've well exceeded, I would say, the penalties that they would receive for those charges, having sat in jail for as long as they have now. I'd like to
Yeah,
see these folks get a trial.
that's
If they've
often a
committed a crime.
standard, right? If your pre-trial detention exceeds the longest possible sentence you could have based on the charges, that's an issue, a very big legal issue. We recently spoke with this attorney, Stephen Donziger, who was facing a similar situation. And this pretrial detention is an issue that many on the left have been talking about for a long time. My wish, JR, would be that people on the right spoke more about this issue before it applied to the Trump rioters, because then I feel like we would really have a shared basis to argue for some reform here.
Yeah. I mean, look, I look at these things with the most honest perspective I can. And, one of my platform issues is, looking at folks that have been they've suffered some type of, I wouldn't say abuse, but unfairness from our justice system. Particularly speaking, we have, millions of people walking around this country right now that have made mistakes early in life and, maybe have received a felony, but they've committed no crime since, and their record is up for expungement and they don't know about it.
Yep.
I would like to see a federal effort that works with the states such that we could automate the expungement of their records, because when they do find out, because they've been disassociated with, from society and from our economy for so long,
yep,
they can't afford to get back in. And look, I grew up in the toughest and most crime-riddled, impoverished district or neighborhood in my district. So, I got out of it and I've become successful professionally. And so I empathize with those folks and, people that want to recontribute back to our society, back to our economy. I mean, if they've behaved and they haven't broken any laws, I think we need to be a forgiving society and we need to stand by the liberty that we talk about so much. And we need to make it, we need to make the government work for us.
Hey, I'm with you on that, JR. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but a couple other things. One of the people, sorry, what was that?
I have about 2 more minutes.
Okay. One of the people that endorsed you is Michael Flynn, and he has said, in my opinion, some really crazy things lately, including that that we should be doing coups and a lot of really aggressive and almost sometimes like delusional Christian dominionist sort of stuff. Is that a perspective you would bring if you were elected, or is that not really your scene?
I mean, it's hard for me to answer that. And I know what you're asking for.
Yeah.
But look, I value my relationship with General Flynn. He's always been a very, very respectful guy to me. I have not seen, I would not seen or heard what you're saying. So,
okay.
I think what you see with me is what you get. I wear my cards on my sleeve. I understand the obligations that I have, taking this position and becoming an elected official. My job is to represent the people. I think Congress is riddled with ideologists that are looking to, further pursue their self-interest. I'm a guy that's very young in my career, very successful, and I don't need to be a representative. Financially, I'm much more better off continuing my career in the nuclear power industry. But, again, I'm going to bring to the table eyes, ears, and the fortitude and willingness to help everyone in my district, regardless of their political affiliation. But I'm not going to, who I choose to pursue for endorsements. I mean, look, I got to win I'm in a contested Republican primary. General Flynn, I consider him a patriot, and I like General Flynn. So, as far as the testament to his character, I can't speak on it. I can just tell you that when I think of General Flynn, I think of a guy that was a very successful general in our United States Army, and he's always been kind to me. And I haven't heard anything radical that I could attest to.
Well, I think I'm reading between the lines a little here, JR, and understanding what you're saying, but I'm glad to send you some citations.
Sure. I'm not trying to dodge the question.
I gotcha. No, I understand the situation. You're in a contested situation. I get it. Listen, I get it. Listen, you've been eminently reasonable in our conversation, and I think this is eye-opening. We've been speaking with J.R. Majewski, who's running in Ohio's 9th District, a Trump supporter, but also a guy that we can engage with on a reasonable basis. JR, I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate yours. And I would say to your listeners, there's so much polarization out there right now. And, people see me, they see the Trump lawn, they see the name Trump. And, look, we have to work with each other. We have to talk. And, this one issue, line in the sand behavior. And, we are not as, we are Americans at the end of the day, but even before that, we're human. And, we have to find a landscape in which we can all get back together, because this country is going down the tubes if we continue on the path we're on. And it's going to take both sides of the aisle to work together to get this done. I don't know if that's possible the way things are going, but you know what, damn it, I'm going to try. So,
JR, thank you so much.
You're welcome.